Welcome back, my fellow SharePoint developers. In this video, we're going to be actually moving forward to completing the form and connecting it to another tool called React Hook Form. We're going to do some validation using Yup. I know it's a funny name, but that's the name of the library that does our validation for us. And then we're actually going to use React Hook Form to handle everything like our state, our form status, and basically just manage all of our form for us. So let's get started. We're going to go ahead and install a few things. First thing we're going to install is, again, Yup. The next thing we're going to install is React Hook Form. After React Hook Form install, at Hook Form Resolvers. Those are the three things that we're going to need to have installed for this scenario to work. Now that we have that installed, inside of our lures folder, we're going to create a new folder, and that folder is going to be called validation. And inside of our validation folder, I'm going to create a file called validation. And in this validation folder and file, we're going to import Yup. We're going to import string from Yup. We're going to go here to our SharePoint site. We're going to need to go to the list and get our object and see what our object looks like from the list. We're going to run items. Let's run this really quick. Here's our items. I recommend that you leave them in this format. Copy the object. We're going to go back into Visual Studio Code. Press and hold Control, then the Shift, and then the letter P. And there's going to be an option here that says JSON to TS. So it's going to convert our object in our clipboard into a TypeScript interface. And this is basically what it's completed for us. We won't need the content type ID, the embed URL. So we're going to be using these. Now, when we go back to the form, we can see that these are single line of text where it's saying it's unknown. So, or any. You don't want to leave anything as any. Leave it as string. Our validation itself is going to be an object. So we're going to use object. And we're also going to be needing Boolean. And the reason we're bringing an object is because the validation itself is going to be an object. Let's create our validation. And our validation schema is going to be of type object, which is a Yup object. And that is going to be a required object. And it's going to have a shape. Let's copy this into here. And this is not going to like it, obviously. So we can actually could type Control D all the way down to work on all those strings that we have. And this is going to be string. And we're going to have a comma after each one. Somehow I think I missed title. And that's going to be required. We're going to put in a message called required field. Running low was type Boolean. That's our validation schema for our form. Now we can keep this interface, but I'm going to show you a bit of a shortcut that you don't necessarily need to use this interface. So we're going to type in export type, and let's call this lures form type. And we're going to use the inferred type, which is from Yup. And we're going to type in type of validation schema. And look at this magic. I'm going to hover over this and look at that. We didn't even have to create a type. Basically, all these are optional. The only thing that's required is string. But this automatically in one line creates your type. And you can use that around your application. I'm going to just show you how powerful this is, because this is going to save you the headaches from all the bugs that you would be taking care of if you didn't have it. So now that we have our validation, let's move over to our lures container where we have our form. So let's create a const, which is going to be an object, and it's going to be set equal to methods. This will all make sense here shortly. So the methods that we're going to use is control. And again, I'm going to explain all this. We're going to be using register, and we're going to be using watch. These are the three methods that we're going to be using. And methods itself It's going to be use form hook. And for the type, it's going to be lures form type. So use form is going to be coming from React hook form. And lures type is going to be coming from our validation. So now for our hook form, we're going to be using our resolver. And the resolver is going to be using the yup resolver. And we're going to be using the validation schema from that. And the next thing we're going to need is default values. And for default values, we're actually inside of our validation. Let's go ahead and create a default values object. So now that we have that, we can actually import it here. Default values, there we go. And then you can see that it was imported from here. I'm still having issues with yup resolver. Oh, I know why. Because you actually have to tell it from where, and it should have a yup folder in here. There we go. That fixes our issue. The next thing we need to do is inside of our return statement, we're going to wrap it with a form provider. And the form provider is going to be bringing in those methods. So we're going to use the spread operator to bring in those methods. Basically, wrap our box with the form provider. So now that that's brought in, we can then go ahead and start connecting our controls to our hook form. So how do we do that? Simple. If we go to our text field here, let's get rid of our default value because now the hook form is going to handle that. And we're going to use the register. So the register uses, it basically registers the field, and you can already tell all of our fields are here. You can see that. Isn't that awesome? Like you can see already the power of TypeScript that it already knows what you're going to be using. So let's go ahead and continue. Register. And in parentheses, you're going to put the name of the field that you're going to register to it. So in our case, I have ID here set to title, so I already know that this is going to be connected to the title. The next thing that we have here is the select. Select is a little bit different. The reason you can use register in text field is because register is easily to bind. It's easier to bind beyond change. Select fields and radio groups and things of that nature are not quite that simple. You have to bring in a controller. And the controller basically connects it connects your component to the hook form. So let's go ahead and create a controller. So we're going to type in controller here, and that's being brought in from a React hook form. And inside of our controller, we're going to give it a name. And the name for this one is going to be lure type. And the type of, it's going to use the control property, and we're going to pass as control. Control is coming from our React hook right here. Remember, we brought the register in and the control that allows us to control fields inside of the form. So we're going to use control. Then we're going to use our render prop. And inside of our render prop, it's just basically going to work as a function. So we're going to add an empty function here. Actually, get rid of these braces. We don't need braces. We're just going to return. So we're using a function that's going to return a JSX element inside, and our JSX element being this form control. And I'll show you how to do that here momentarily. But in the render method, what you're going to want to pass is an object, which is our actual field from React hook form. And inside of our render method, inside of the actual rendering, we are going to copy this form control. Let's Control X to get rid of that from there, and then paste it inside of our parentheses. And it's going to render our component here. Let's get rid of our value here. We won't need on change because that's binded. And we're going to bring in our field into our select. Maybe I misspelled lower type. Let's find out. Oh, I sure did. Lower type is together. Again, this would have been a bug if you wouldn't have had TypeScript. This one is going to register as depth. Again, all I'm doing is setting up a brace register, parenthesis, and the name. And again, TypeScript automatically knows what's going on. And this is another one that we have to use a controller for. So let's set up controller. And controller, we're going to use name. And let's set it up to open close quotes. We'll worry about adding it here in a moment. Control is going to equal to control, the control property from our hook. And in our render, it's going to be, again, let's just do an empty function that returns something. Something's not liking something here. Oh, forgot to put an equal sign after render. There we go. So inside of the parentheses for our function, we're going to inject our field. And then inside of our return statement, we're going to copy this form control. Control X to cut it out of there. Control V to paste it into the render. Running low. It's going to be the name of it. We're going to have to bring this into our radio group. And inside of our radio group is where we're going to have our field. We're going to bring in all the properties from field. And obviously we're going to have to get rid of name because name is already being registered up here. So get rid of name. Now we can save it. Now, how are we going to know that something's happening here? It'd be really good to be able to see what changes are occurring, right? So let's find out how we can do that. Inside of this box component. Perfect. And inside of our preview tag here, I call it a preview tag. I'm not even sure if it's called that. But we'll call it that. And in here we're going to use the JSON stringify method. And for our stringify method, we're going to use our watch. And watch is a function that basically allows you to watch what happens with the fields at any given moment. So now let's run npm run build. Looks like it's successfully built. Go back to our build, to our SharePoint site, and we're gonna copy our files in here. It's gonna ask us to replace some of them, obviously, because some of those files need to be replaced with new code that we just wrote. We go back to the form, and obviously everything's empty, but look at what happens. You see how it automatically is connecting our information? This is pretty awesome. And automatically we have our object that we're going to be using to pass that information into SharePoint. How awesome is that? Then you have yes, which would be true, and false, if you set up to no. That's going to do it for this video. I'd like to thank you for coding with me today, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, give it a like. If you think someone else could benefit, please share it. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment and subscribe if you can. It's free for you and it really helps me out. Finally, if you can, go ahead and click on that bell to let you know when the next video is added.